Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we discuss judging art. I happen to be a judge at a very prestigious art contest called the US Open. It's a chainsaw carving contest, and if you've never heard of it, check it out. In this episode, we're going to discuss how to judge art. Art is very important to me. It's my whole life, and I know everyone in this competition is an artist. This isn't going to be easy. Stick around. My name's Jeff Mohr. I'm the Northwoods Carver, and thanks for seeing what I saw. Welcome back, everybody. Jeff Mohr. I'm here at your disposal. Well, not really. I'm here at the United States of these. Welcome back, everybody. Jeff Mohr, Northwoods Carver, here at the US Open, where all great things happen. We're literally here at the US Open. I'm going to be judging it this year along with some of my counterparts in the judging community. At least, well, not really. There's no judging community. It's just a couple other guys that are going to judge. So anyways, there's a thing that's happening down there. Maybe you want to take a pan over there and take a look at it. And maybe, just maybe, I'll take you for a little walk down there and we'll see who's who and what they're doing. So stick around. There's sure going to be a lot more fun in this episode. So, well, we're here again, and we're going to discuss the habits of mind. This is an article that I found online, and it's going to go over basically the habits of mind, how to judge art with an informed eye. Let's get into it, shall we? Now, I should start by saying that none of us is truly qualified to judge the creative work of another person. I believe that 100%, by the way. Beyond the judgment that they themselves can place upon their own work. In other words, you are the only judge of your work that really matters. So, there you go. It's a tough job, and I don't believe art should be judged. I mean, unless you're buying it or unless you're making it. People can just, it's all relative. So let's just cruise right through that and on to the next part. But with an understanding of the creative process that went into the piece, the amount of time and level of mastery of the skills used to create this work, as well as the dedication and the passion involved, we can often gain a much clearer perspective of the purpose of the work and the intent of the artist. Sometimes there is no point, or the piece was created by someone with very little skill. And that's when our judgment of the work is cast aside by the emotion the piece draws from us, and whether we simply like the feeling of it that it gives to us, or maybe it's the dislike that turns us off. But ask yourself, have you ever looked at someone else's artwork and thought to yourself, wow, that's just awful? Well, I think every human on the planet has done that at one point or another. I myself have done that to my own work, and sometimes other people as well. Like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? There is excuses and there's reasons for really horrible stuff. Some people are just not, like they're not aware and they can't see it. And far be it from me to tell them that I can't see it either. I can't. I won't. I'll just smile and keep on going. All right, okay. Maybe it was at a friend's house, at a museum or gallery, or even social media. But wherever it was, there was just something about the artwork that you didn't like. Not at all. Maybe it was the colors. Maybe it was the subject matter. Or maybe it was the skill level of the artist who created it. I know it's happened to me more times than I can remember. So the person writing this article is obviously an artist. And I'm trying, it says MD Campbell, Illustration and Design. The reason why I'm covering this is because sometimes, there's a lot smarter people out there than me. And sometimes it's good to get a perspective. And this is basically what this is, a perspective. So I know how I do things, but I want to hear how other people do things. And I just want to learn a little something here right alongside. So have a seat on the short bus as we go through this entire article. All right. But in contrast, have you ever looked at someone else's artwork and thought, wow, that's awesome? Yes, I have. All the time. So judging the U.S. Open, there's some of the most formidable carvers on the planet at that event. Like there's multiple different places that have carving events like this that just draw in the sharks of the carving world, and there can only be one, right? And it's impossible really to judge, because that's another thing I'd like to discuss, is as a judge, you might have a personal favorite, but that don't matter. It don't matter. You might like a person more than another person, or you might love all the people there, but like a certain carving. And as a judge, it doesn't matter. That is why there's such thing as a criteria. So that you have to go through the criteria. I can't tell you how many times I've judged the U.S. Open, and from a distance, I can say, oh wow, that's pretty awesome. Hikaru Kodama's piece or whatever, and I thought, man, that thing is awesome. And then when I scored it, it scored for crap. So the ones you think that might win don't, and the ones you think shouldn't win will. And it's a criteria thing. There's a lot goes into it. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but maybe this guy will in this article. Maybe he can help me explain the comings and goings inside my own brain. All right. So we talked about wow, that's just awesome when you see something cool, and then you go right to so much so that you took a picture of it and saved it to your computer, or maybe even tried to recreate it yourself. Again, oh boy, was it the colors? Was it the subject matter? Or maybe it was their skill level that went into it. What did they do different, I know for a fact that I have many other carvers' carvings or images or paintings saved on my phone. And I know many other carvers have my pictures on their phone. Carvers I never even met before. It was interesting. I met Danny Thomas, and I had he didn't know who I was. And I just said, hey, what's going on, Danny? He goes, he was asking the people around who I was, and they're like, oh, that's Jeff Mohr. And I was like, yeah, nice to meet you. And then I was showing him my work because he had no idea who I was. And then I got to this one picture of a Pegasus, steampunk Pegasus. And he had it as a screensaver. Yeah, pretty cool. What a great guy. Anyway, it was a good time. That was one of those moments where you're just like, are you kidding me? He lives in the UK. And I live in Wisconsin. In the tundra of Wisconsin. So much so that you took a picture of it, saved it to your computer, or maybe tried to recreate it. Okay. And for me, I can't remember how many times this has happened too. Artwork has a powerful ability to move us and trigger our emotions. Sometimes positively, and of course, sometimes negatively. And I believe if it's done well, and it's a negative response, it was meant to be that way. A disturbing thing, I think that's our job as artists, is to, be the finger on the pulse of society and the way things are. And sometimes it doesn't look so pretty. All right. Oddly enough, most of the artwork we see on a regular basis actually has no effect on us at all. That's right. This kind of artwork offers nothing to stir our emotions or leave a lasting impression on us. That's true. How many times have you been through a store or an apartment building or some sort of complex, and there's just pictures on the wall, and you're just like, well, whatever, toilet art or whatever, with the flowers in the vase, and then yeah. We usually see this kind of work on social media, where we scroll right past it onto the next one, or we see it in a museum or gallery and walk right on by without giving it a second thought. It's the new song we hear and immediately change it before it has a chance to develop. That's a good analogy, actually. So what could be so uninteresting about this work that it didn't even measure up to our lowest standard? Was it the colors, the subject matter, or again, maybe it was the skill of the artist or lack thereof? These are the three typical reactions we have when we experience new art, fashion, or even performance art. When we're attracted, we are drawn to a piece. When we're repelled, we withdraw from it. And when it does absolutely nothing for us, we take a passive disinterest and walk right on by. For me, whenever I see new art, I can usually gauge how much I like a piece by how much I actually dislike it. Interesting. Let me explain. See, this is why I read these articles, because I'm learning something here too, folks. What I've found throughout my life is that the majority of art that I like when I first see it is usually because it connects with me on some level, which I can relate. Again, the colors, the subject matter, or the skill put into it. Even more, I've found that the majority of art that I don't like forces me to think harder and examine it more deeply to try to find out why it turns me off or makes me want to dismiss it. Now, I got something to add to this. A lot of times, if I feel like I don't like something, especially in the artistic world or even about a person, I need to try to understand that thing better so that I feel like I gave it the biggest chance I could. In other words, if I don't want to discredit a human being or a piece of art just by looking at it because I didn't understand it. If I don't understand it, then that's on me, right? But sometimes it's just not good. And I try my hardest to get to where that person's at. And a lot of times they make it easy for us. They leave breadcrumbs. And some other times it's just comes from outer space and you don't know what you're looking at. So that being said, I'll move on. Judging artwork can be done looking at the basic fundamentals and principles of art. Shape and form, color and value, perspective and composition, and anatomy, for example. Most of us look at a drawing or painting and measure how much we like it by simply how good is it. When the basic fundamentals do not stand out as being flawed or disrupting, then we usually judge the art as good. However, when those basics begin to abstract or look incorrect, that's when our eye picks up on it right away. Whether consciously or subconsciously, our eye picks up flaws or something disturbing or distracting. It's difficult to let it go, in your opinion, of the forms, and our judgment of it stands firm. So in other words, basically, we have fight or flight. We have this, we're very, very weary of things in the bushes, so to speak. Like we're just freaking cavemen, and we're just kind of like lumbering through the forest, and we see something about a bush that just isn't right. And it doesn't matter if you have a big old club on your shoulder and, your favorite club and stick, and you're just kind of walking through the woods and you see this form or this shape that doesn't quite look right. And then you back out of there. Even though you have your favorite club, you just don't know what it is. You're not taking any chances. We're going to stay. We're going to live another day. We're going to club another day. If you back out. But if you move forward, that could be a giant, Neanderthal eating leopard or something in there. Who knows? Anyways, that's my point, is that's ingrained in our brain, right? So when we look at something it's very important that we pick things out that aren't quite right? About people, about food, right? You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Okay, good. It's ingrained in us. However, this is how most of us judge the artwork we see, based on initial impression and how much our brain can make sense of what we're seeing. And yeah, sometimes it takes a few minutes to click. And for me, this is just my perspective. If I see something I like, it doesn't matter if it's done well or, I don't know, just sometimes I just like stuff. I like the simplicity of it, or I like the complexity of it. I like how it doesn't make sense, or I like how it makes perfect sense. I like how it, affects me at that moment, and I like how it affects me, from 10 years ago, how I felt, and it reminds me of that. It's like music. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on. For me, I tend to look at things like the confidence in the work, the lighting, the brushstrokes, the line work, whether it's a unique subject that makes me think, or if it's a cliche and done 1,000 times before. This is another thing I like to talk about too, is you can do a cliche thing that's been done 1,000 times before, but it's a challenge to do it artistically your way and make that make sense and make people say, oh, I just never seen that before. That's cool. This is what I respond to, and in many cases, I've come back to a piece that I didn't like initially, only to find that there's something there worth appreciating that I may have missed before. So this is, the part where he says he goes back to a painting that he didn't like, and now he likes it. As a judge, as a carving judge, the U.S. Open, we used to, if you have to, you can go back out and re-look at things, because sometimes after you have your conversations with the judges, and we put our mentions in as we're grading, as we're going through, we're putting little mentions in there about things that, why you scored whatever, sometimes. And then we'll all, explain to each other, this is why this is that. And then basically, it's not like we just turn our sheets in and then go over the math, and then whoever wins. There's a discussion, and we have to say, because there is that thing, did I miss something? Because we have to give all the carvers a fair shake, right? So we have to do that. Did I miss something? Nobody wants to go home thinking they didn't do it the best job they could. As a judge, these people come from all over the world, and it's our job to try to, by the criteria, make the best decisions. And it's impossible. I don't think judging is, it's a form of competition, right? This whole thing, it is a competition, but it's also not meant to be. I don't think art should be a competition. It's just, we are man, we are women, we are a race of people that we can't do anything but compete. Competing here, competing there. Who can spit a watermelon seed the furthest? If we'll do that, then we'll do anything. All right, getting back to her. In a court of law, judges relies on his or hers years of education and experience to be able to assess a case. Along with the knowledge, though, a judge must also rely on personal intuition to form their opinions. Funny, we are taught early on not to judge other people, yet our legal system is based solely on judging people. In my opinion, the same can be said for art, movies, music, or any of the creative fields. When we hear a new song for the first time, we immediately form an opinion based on whether it appeals to us or not. When we see a new movie or an exhibit, we're easy to come away expressing our opinion on what we saw. It's perfectly normal, and it is known as our subjective perspective. It shows we measure the song or art based on our reactive emotions. How many times have you said, I hate that song because they put too many effects on the singer's voice, or love that movie because the special effects were unbelievable? Subjective perspective is how we personally relate to an experience, an event, or person, or thing, anything really. Now, when we have to rely on the absence of reactive emotions, it's known as objective perspective. This can be more credible because it is based on facts, not feelings. Interesting. Saying a song is terrible because the instruments were completely out of tune, or that the movie was great because it was based on a true story and kept true to the actual events, can usually have more weight than just saying, I thought that movie was dumb. Hello. Yeah, so critiquing something, you have to have a reason, right? You just can't say I don't like it, because then nobody's going to take that opinion, and nobody cares about that opinion. It's just there's no other information that you gave them. You dig? You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, and like an experienced courtroom judge, it is wise to apply both subjective and objective perspectives in presenting a well-informed opinion on something. But what exactly are the facts involved when assessing artwork? I mean, how do you look at a drawing or a woven quilt and develop a concrete evaluation? Good question. When I was young, the grades for art were either pass or fail, which bothered me because I took art seriously. Other kids would do the minimum and get the same grade as me. The only time someone failed is if they just didn't show up. These days, evaluating students is much different, especially in art. Teachers must evaluate student work based on specific criteria to provide a justified grade. So, yeah, no different than than judging an art, a chainsaw carving event, because there's going to be a subject, and it is normally like North American wildlife or wildlife or whatever. You're welcome to carve whatever, but if you don't have those things in there, then you're probably not going to score well, and you're not going to do well. But hey, there's a good chance you'll do great at the auction. Who knows? Oh yeah, by the way, there's auctions. We'll get into that another day. When I taught at the college level, I used a list of subjective criteria to grade students like in class. All right, do that again. When I taught at the college level, I used a list of subjective criteria to grade students, like in classwork, home assignments, participation, conceptual understanding, and final projects. I only failed one student in my years of college teaching, and only because they didn't do the work. That sounds like a real artist to me. The one that got away. All right. At the high school level, evaluating student work requires clear objective criteria, combined with an informed subjective perspective. There's no more pass or fail, and parents, students, and administrators need a concrete evaluation that makes sense and clearly shows work ethic, development, and progress. This is where we use a set of criteria called the habits of mind. This method of evaluation is based on teaching, cultivating, observing, and assessing students with the learning environment. Interesting. All right. So what are these habits of mind? Well, in the context of a habit, it is a pattern of intellectual behavior that can lead to productive action. Understanding these behaviors and actions, they may produce or help us understand an artist's creative process, while also being able to apply both our subjective and objective perspectives. These, the habits of mind, can help track progress, keep students on task and focused, measure their abilities to see skill improvement, and help assess involvement and intent throughout each phase of a project. All right, let's see what these things are. Let's see what the habits of mind are. Quite a few of them. There is exactly, okay. One is persistence. This deals with the amount of time, energy, and focus put into our work. Now, of course, from a judging perspective, they only have X amount of hours, 25 or 30, whatever it is. And they best be hauling. They best be doing their dangdest to get it done. So that is not even a question when it comes to what we're talking about. But it says it's how much, energy and focus is put into the work, where clearly these people that are carving are all top notch. It's about how we stand firm and forge through challenges despite all factors. In most creative projects, a point comes when we feel overwhelmed or that we're out of our depth. Being able to see our way through that point and figure out how to make the project work is persistence. This accounts for 10% of the grade and is evident in any piece of work where it's clear there were challenges. I hit a wall virtually on every single carving that I ever did at some point. Well, the bigger ones. And I'm tenacious. I am persistent. And I also have a lot of experience. So, when you can stump somebody that's been doing it for 35 years, just because they're trying to push it a little bit further every time, I think that's great. It's good exercise. It's good exercise for the brain. Because sometimes when you get to a certain level, the only way to do something, to get it done, to do something new, is to go back and do something old. In other words, take from those lessons you learned years and years ago that you just kind of pushed under the rug and kind of dust them off and put them back in use. And I'll tell you what, just having those basics is very important. All right. Number 2, experimentation. Groovy. This is how we move through the different conceptual options in approaching a project. It's how we explore different materials, mediums, and techniques, and how we're going to execute the project without limiting ourselves and seeing all opportunities as available to us. Now that's a good experimentation. Also accounts for 10% of the grade and result evident in a piece and how fluid the piece looks, especially among other pieces in the collection. Number 3, purpose. This is the realization that we're going into a project for a specific reason, not just because we have to do it or we're bored. Having purpose is to have intent to satisfy a goal or directive, whether in a class for a client or just for ourselves. Purpose is a subjective perspective, so it isn't factored as a percentage. It can, however, help influence other habits. So what they're saying is kind of like when I say you were compelled to do something, that's what I'm talking about. Number 4 is planning, and that's 10%. This relies on how capable we are to plan out a project, having a clear scope of how it will unfold before we even start. I've had other discussions on this the importance of planning, like the importance of planning, color, palette, and power of sketching a pre-sketch. Like for me, planning can actually be the most vital step in a project, from fashion and decoration to illustration and design. Having a complete plan will not only save time in all the areas, but will open the door for more confidence and a more intelligent approach to the project. We're all tempted to just grab our materials and tools and just get right to the work. But without a good plan in place, from conceptual studies, swatches, or a written outline of expectations, a project can easily drift off course or fall apart very quickly. And while planning accounts of 10% of the grade, it's usually evident in a final piece that is tightly cohesive to a collection or extremely well executed. Now, that's me in a nutshell, folks. Yes, that is me in a nutshell. I can't, I have a problem with planning because I've done it so many times, but I like working with people that understand plans and that can work around plans very well. I struggle. Let's just say that. I'm just gonna leave it right there. All right, number 5, expression. The ability to develop well-formed conceptual ideas and communicate them, whether to a teacher or peers, or even ourselves, is essential in working through roadblocks or solutions that may lead to problems later. All right, so that's 10% of this, the expression is. So communication skills are vital for most creative people. Being able to express ideas and be open to the ideas of others is important to development of a project. I've worked with students and colleagues who sometimes had difficulty expressing their ideas. Then when left alone to develop the project, they would run into problems they weren't able to work out. The result was often a project that was unrealized, that didn't follow the original plan, or was weak in its execution. 10% of a grade goes to expression, which can be seen in a project that communicates clearly and effectively. 6, reflection. So reflection. All right, that's 10% as well. All right, so this isn't this isn't what we use. This is this person's criteria, right? So this is how he kind of judges his stuff. Kind of neat though. Reflection is the element of introspection, looking soulfully inward, that we exhibit through the duration of our projects. A brutally honest self-evaluation of critical feedback we share with ourselves to recognize potential flaws, shortcomings, and even successes in our work. It's all the ability to take critical feedback from our teachers, peers, and contemporaries and sort through them to find the gems of truth to help improve our process and our work. Again, it's 10% of the student's grade, but shows in the time and consideration we put in our work. Okay. I have one thing to say about that whole thing. All right, so some people have no business giving critiques because a lot of times they're just critical, and it's not in a positive way, and it's not in a way that is going to help inform or whatever. It's just their mean, maybe it's their own insecurities or whatever, but they can't help but be mean. And I've listened to people go back and forth. It's one thing to kid around with your buddy or something, but this kind of gets out of hand from my perspective. Number 7 is craft. Craft is simply the way we execute our projects effectively, on task with our own abilities. Most students learn from copying the successful work that inspires them, whether it's basic woodworking projects, creating fun crafts, or drawing intricate Zentangles, whatever that is. For me, I copied everything from comic books to catalogs, finding everything to be a worthwhile resource. But nowadays, unfortunately, the internet allows easy access to so many images that many times people think it's okay to just copy someone else's work and call it their own. And that's true. I mean, I think everybody's guilty of copying stuff, honestly. I've never met anybody that just did all originals, because that would be like, especially if you're going through classes, you're copying stuff. They're going to see how well you can duplicate an image or to draw a still life or whatever. It's trying to copy something is the whole essence of art, in my copy something to a degree till you get used to doing it and then put your spin on it. So there you go. There's a big difference in learning a craft or a skill by practicing and just replicating what someone else has done and putting your name on it. So 10% of a student's grade is in their craft, yet when we go to a gallery, museum, or even look through a magazine, we can see how important craft is to a piece by how well the artist utilized materials, executed their project, and whether the piece retains a unique sense of style that is different from anyone else's. Number 8, observation. Much like reflection, observation is one of the hands-off habits that is more concerned with our intense examination of our work and process and those around us, making constant mental notes which we apply toward our daily work. One thing I teach almost every student is to step back about 10 feet from their work in progress and look at it. Just look at it. Then to turn it upside down and look at it some more. To observe our work, surroundings, and see where we are getting lazy or where we need improvement or taking shortcuts. Observation isn't as critical as reflection. It's based more on the evidence that occurs during the creative process. In my professional career, I've had to literally walk away from my desktop or my computer and go get something to eat, wash up in the restroom, or even go home and sleep on a project. This allows me to break the connection I have with the project, look at things around me that are completely different, and then come back to my project with fresh eyes. While it's not something noticeable in our work, 10% of a student's grade is earned from their observation, which I evaluate by observing them myself. Maintenance. For me, maintenance is a big part of my own work. It's the way we treat our workspace, our materials and tools, and it's the attitude and how we prepare for a project, and the cleanup afterwards. I have a hard time working if my space is disorganized, even on my computer. If I have too many files on a desktop, I usually put them all away before starting a new project to make sure I don't overwrite anything. Once I get started on a project, well, when things get messy, and it's the normal thing like brushes, paints, pen and ink, devices, cables, they all litter my space. But a personal habit I developed many years ago was to maintain my space, keep my tools in excellent shape. Materials and tools cost too much to be left out, abused, or damaged. For a student, this affects their grade. Maintenance accounts for another 10%. For a professional or a hobbyist, it can affect the production of or quality of their work, or even the attitude of the potential clients. Many artists prefer a space that's messy and cluttered with tools and materials, and that's how they like to work. But in assessing a student's work, the clutter and messy attitude can often come out in their work. And lastly, good thing I have a wife that literally follows me around with a dustbuster and a broom. All right, so lastly, the final project. This is the end game. The final project is worth 20% of a student's grade and is culmination of all habits applied together and exhibited in final presentation, performance, or piece. A final project doesn't fully exhibit all the aspects that went into the work, much like a car doesn't exhibit all individual components under the hood. A final project reveals everything that went into it, and if there's any deficiencies, it'll show. In my experience grading students, there may have been plenty of high grades, but no one has ever received 100. Because in every evaluation, there's always been something that needed improvement, attention, or some adjustment. Nowadays, when I visit a show or museum, I try to use these habits of mind when looking at a piece of art or hearing new music. Think about how persistent the artist was in coming up with the initial idea and working through them. I consider the experimentation they did to see what the materials or techniques they could have used. I looked at the purpose of the piece to see what the message was and if it holds function or emotion that it tries to evoke. I question the planning that went into it and whether it looks rushed or well thought out. I ask myself whether the piece expresses the artist's views, ideas, or thoughts clearly, or are they obscured? And often I'll step away from the work and reflect on how my experience with it was. Was it good or bad? I regard the craft that went into the piece, seeing the confidence there was in each line, phrase, or stroke. And then I observe how the piece looks in its environment, as well as within the body of work, and if it makes sense. And I examine the work to see how well maintained it is, whether it is defective, not well made, or cared for. Like I said, I can apply these habits of mine to my own work, seeing how well I adhered to each one of them throughout my own projects. And when I do, I'm able to go from looking at my work with a subjective perspective to more objective perspective and make adjustments where I need to. Of course, it doesn't always work out, and often I'll see areas that are flawed or need improvement after a piece has been finished or published. Sometimes I kick myself because while no one else may notice, I did. And that is what it's really about, being able to create work, understand the purpose behind it, and give ourselves a fair and honest evaluation to help us improve, become better, and do what we love to do. Also, it's important to remember that while using these habits of mind to better evaluate artwork, to understand an artist's process, it is by no means a way to judge the work of other artists or to hinder the creative spirit from being expressed. To me, I would much rather see an untrained expressive work of art that is all over the place than an overthought, overproduced body of work that draws no emotion or inspiration, no matter how good it looks. So I think I'm gonna end this article right here. Well, everyone, it's a wrap. We're all exhausted. We just had some food at the tap house, not a quarter mile away from the park, Carson Park in Eau Claire. Doesn't look like we're going to have it there anymore as far as it looks right now. We're trying to do it in Abrams, possibly. That's Wisconsin as well. And what a blast. This was a gift. It's a signed bottle from my buddy, shout out Ray Banfield. He's probably still sitting there at the bar that we left everybody in because it's like 10 o'clock. So us old folks, we had to bail. The young folks can hang out, but we wanted air conditioning, quiet. Pam wants a nice soft bed. She'll settle for this one. And I can tell you this. I don't like being on the road. I like being at home. But the thing that changes it all is when you get to meet and be with all these great friends. Some you've known, some you haven't, but they're the best people that I know. I mean, all of them. Whether if they do what I do, which is carve, but they do it at a much higher level in my opinion. They travel so far and they work so hard for so little, really. The auctions don't normally pan out, as we all know. If you're a carver, you know how this goes down. You know, somebody might do a little square pig and it'll sell for $800, and then a masterpiece will sell for $350 or $400. Just the way it is. And that's a bummer, because when you're sitting on the outside looking in, you see all these great carvers and they're putting out this great stuff and they're not getting paid. Not that this was like that, there was some of that, but and then you see somebody who's just coming up, his piece caught fire. My student Troy Boroff, he was right next to me. He had done a couple of cardinals and they sold for like almost $3,000. For a couple cardinals. Like
There was 4 of them.
4 of them? Really?
On that. It was beautiful. He did a
really
great job.
And, you know, he was stoked. Good for him.
Was.
Good for you, Troy Boroff. And everyone was stoked, and now I'm back at the hotel room, sipping on a little horse soldier, and thinking about tomorrow, what I need to do. I gotta drive home and unpack and all that, but let me tell you something about judging this event. There's a bunch of people out there saying, how did that win? Or, you know, well, there's 4 judges. We have a criteria, and there's 5 things on the criteria. Well, actually 6, kind of. And we stay in that box. We first do our numbers, and then we discuss. We take totals down, then we discuss that stuff. And because we all want to know why we scored something a certain way. Just, all right, so you scored it. Why? What's the deal? And we all analyze each other's, you know, answers, and if it sounds good, then basically we don't change our numbers. But you know, unless there's an argument for changing maybe a half point or something here or there, but it's very difficult, and we don't just go by numbers. We just don't. And we don't just go by what we like. Because as soon as you get there, as soon as I walk into a competition, I don't think. I just kind of stay away from everything, judging wise, and let the cards fall where they may. And for those who might be asking about color, putting paint on a carving, if you're going to paint, you better paint the hell out of it, because you're going to be judged on your paint. If you put a little bit on, there might be strokes against you, depending on what it looks like. If you're going to put a lot on, then you better be really good. And we saw a lot of that today. A lot of great painters up there. But is it a carving contest or a painting contest? Well, it's a carving contest until you put paint on. If you decide to finish your thought and put color on it, that's awesome. And they do tend to do a little better, especially in sales, you know, at the end. But then everybody else wants to follow that, and now you've got a bunch of painted carvings. And the ones that aren't done well, the people that don't manage their time very well, well, they're just not going to score very high, even if the carving's great. So I'm neither here nor there on any of that. I just have to judge what's in front of us, and we judge according to what's under the tent at that time. We don't look back 5 years. It's none of that. It is what it is. So anyways, thanks everyone for watching. I'm exhausted. My wife is exhausted. Thanks for seeing what I saw, and I'll see you on the next one.
Well, now that was very interesting. Hey, wake up. It's over. Shit. Okay. My bad.